This happened when I was 19, home from college for winter break. My parents went on a week-long trip, leaving me in charge of our quiet two-story suburban house. I was looking forward to the peace and quiet. The first couple of days were uneventful. On the third day, I started hearing noises. It was a faint scratching sound, coming from the ceiling of my upstairs bedroom. I assumed it was a squirrel or a raccoon that had gotten into the attic. It was annoying, but not scary. I made a mental note to tell my dad when he got back. The next day, I noticed a strange, musty smell in the upstairs hallway near the pull-down hatch that led to the attic. It smelled faintly of stale sweat and garbage. I figured whatever animal was up there had probably made a mess. That evening, as I was watching TV downstairs, I glanced at the hallway, and my blood ran cold. The attic hatch, which was always firmly shut, was now slightly ajar, a dark crack in the white ceiling. I stared at it for a long time, my mind racing. I was sure it had been closed that morning. Had the animal somehow pushed it open? I grabbed a broom and, with my heart pounding, pushed the hatch closed. It clicked firmly into place. I tried to forget about it. That night, I was woken up around 3 a.m. The scratching sound was back, but this time it was different. It wasn't the frantic scratching of an animal. It was a slow, deliberate scrape sound, followed by a soft thud. It was coming from directly above my bed. Then I heard something that made every muscle in my body freeze. A low, quiet cough. It was the sound of a person. I lay there, completely paralyzed by fear for what felt like an eternity. The person in my attic was moving, a slow shuffle from one end of the house to the other. I could hear the faint creak of the joists under their weight. My mind reeled, reevaluating the past few days, the smell, the hatch being open. This wasn't a new development. They had been up there the whole time. My phone was on my nightstand, with a movement so slow it was agonizing. I reached for it. As my fingers brushed against the screen, the movement directly above me stopped. The silence that followed was somehow more terrifying than the noise. It knew I was awake. It was listening. I didn't dare to breathe. After a full minute of suffocating silence, I heard one final soft sound from the attic, the quiet, metallic click of a latch to a vent or a crawl space. Then nothing. I stayed motionless in my bed until the sun came up. I then grabbed my car keys, ran out of the house, and called the police from my car. When they arrived, they went up into the attic with their guns drawn. They found a makeshift bed of old blankets and insulation. They found empty food wrappers, water bottles filled with urine, and a small pile of my dad's old clothes. They also found that one of the ventilation grates leading to the space between the walls had been pried open. The person was gone. They had presumably slipped down through the walls and out of the basement. The police think it was a homeless person who had found a way in weeks ago and had been living there, coming down at night to steal food when we were asleep. They were never caught. My parents sold the house 6 months later. I still can't sleep without a light on, and I can never shake the feeling of being watched from above.
I was house-sitting for my parents for a week while they were on vacation. Their house is in a nice, quiet suburb, but it's the last one on the street, and the backyard backs up onto a small, dark patch of woods. The yard itself is large and fenced in, and my main job was just to look after their old golden retriever, Rusty. On the third night, around 11 p.m., Rusty started acting strangely. He was standing at the glass sliding door that leads to the backyard, letting out a low, guttural growl, the fur on his back raised. This was very out of character for him. He's the friendliest dog in the world. "What is it, boy?" I whispered, peering out into the dark yard. The motion sensor security light wasn't on, so I couldn't see much beyond the patio. I slid the door open a crack, and Rusty went wild, barking furiously into the darkness. I quickly pulled him back in and locked the door. My heart started to beat a little faster. I turned on the exterior light. The powerful floodlight illuminated the entire yard. At the very back, near the fence that bordered the woods, a man was standing there. He was tall, dressed in dark clothing, and he was standing perfectly, unnaturally still. He was just staring at the house. I froze, a wave of pure terror washing over me. I immediately grabbed the phone and called 911. As I was on the phone with the dispatcher, my eyes glued to the figure. The man slowly raised one hand, as if in greeting, and then simply melted back into the darkness of the woods. By the time the police arrived 10 minutes later, he was long gone. They searched the area, but found nothing. They told me it was probably just a transient and to keep the doors locked. The next night, I was a nervous wreck. I kept all the lights on and sat in the living room with Rusty, watching the back door. Around the same time, Rusty started to growl again. I crept to the window and looked out. He was back. But this time, he wasn't at the back of the yard. He was halfway across the lawn, much closer. My blood ran cold. He was standing there, staring again. I called the police again, but I knew he'd be gone before they arrived, and I was right. This became a horrifying routine for the next 2 nights. Each night he would appear in the yard a little closer than the night before. The police started treating me like I was a paranoid crank. On the last night, before my parents were due home, I was determined not to sleep. Around midnight, Rusty began to growl. I looked out, and my heart stopped. He was on the patio. He was standing right outside the glass door, not 10 feet away from me. I could see his face clearly in the light. It was pale and gaunt, with empty, hollow-looking eyes. He didn't move. He just stared at me. Then, with a horrifyingly slow and deliberate motion, he reached out and tried the handle of the sliding glass door. Jiggle. Jiggle. It held fast. He then moved to the kitchen window and did the same, his long fingers testing the lock. He went around the back of the house, methodically testing every single window and door, his movements calm and unhurried. He knew I was watching. He wanted me to watch. It was a siege. I sat on the floor crying silently with Rusty growling by my side until the sun came up. He was gone with the daylight. My parents came home that afternoon. I never told them the full extent of what happened. I couldn't. I just know that the man wasn't a simple burglar. He wasn't trying to be stealthy. He was playing a game, and I'm terrified to think what would have happened if he'd found a door unlocked.
This happened in my first apartment after college. It was a cheap, slightly run-down unit in an old, converted Victorian house. The walls were paper-thin. I could hear everything my neighbors did. My next-door neighbor was a very quiet young woman who I rarely saw. The only time I ever heard her was when she came home from work. I could hear her keys in the lock, the door closing, and her footsteps as she walked across her living room. One evening, I was cooking dinner when I heard her come home. I heard the usual sequence: key, door, footsteps. But then I heard something else. A second set of footsteps. Hers were light, and these were heavy, like a man wearing work boots. I figured she had a boyfriend over. No big deal. A few hours later, around 10 p.m., I heard a quiet tap, tap, tap on the shared wall between our living rooms. I paused my TV. It came again. Tap, tap, tap. It sounded like a deliberate signal. I was a bit weirded out. I ignored it. The next day, I saw her in the hallway. I smiled and said, "Sounds like you had company last night." She looked at me, her face pale with confusion. "What? No, I was alone. I'm always alone."
I felt a chill go down my spine. "Oh, I must have heard wrong," I stammered and quickly went into my apartment. If she was alone, who did I hear walking in with her? And who was knocking on my wall? That night, it happened again. I heard her come home, followed by the heavy bootsteps of the man who wasn't there. Later that night, the knocking started again, but it was louder, more insistent. Knock. I sat on my couch, frozen. I called out, "Who is it?" From the other side of the wall, a man's voice, low and gravelly, replied, "Let me in." I nearly jumped out of my skin. I yelled back, "You have the wrong apartment," and turned my TV up as loud as it would go. The knocking eventually stopped. The next morning, I was leaving for work and saw that my neighbor's door was ajar. A wave of dread washed over me. I pushed the door open and called her name. The apartment was silent, but I saw something that made me run out and call the police. On the wall that we shared, there was a large, crudely cut hole, about 2 feet wide, hidden behind a poster that had been pulled aside. It went straight through the plaster and lath into the wall cavity between our apartments. The police arrived and found the young woman in her bedroom, tied up but alive. She was terrified and told them that a man had been hiding in her closet for 2 days. He had come out that morning and attacked her. He was gone before I found her. The police figured out he had been accessing the building through the fire escape and had been living in the crawl space between our units for who knows how long. He was the footsteps I heard. He was the one knocking. He wasn't knocking on my wall. He was knocking from inside it. The man was never found. I broke my lease and moved out the next day.